Man, it's been a while since the last one, but I gotta say, I'm really glad that I took the time with this, because as we speak, I'm currently working on some stuff for this what if that has never been done in a what if before. I can guarantee you guys that. I really want this one to be something special. So as far as this particular what if is concerned, it may take some time for us to get this one going, because I'm having some custom art done for this one. You guys may have seen me post about it. So once I get the artist going and I get the renderings done, I can move forward with the story. But I promise you, what I have planned will be worth the wait. But anyway, without further delays, let's get into the episode. We pick back up with Ash and Paul on the battlefield. Ash is silent to Paul's request, thinking, wow, I didn't know it was this bad. Then, Ash is interrupted by Paul. Well, do you accept my conditions? Ash snaps back to reality. Okay, Paul, you got a deal. If I win, you accept my help. If you win, we part ways. Paul then sends out Electivire to join Pignite. Ash sends in both Duat and Infernape. Ash knows that this battle will be tough. If there's a trainer that knows Ash more than himself, it's Paul. But Paul is his friend, and he has to win in order to help him. The battle starts, and Paul then orders a Thunder Punch and a Fire Pledge. While Pignite's time is near perfect, Electivire's is still off due to the hesitation of Paul whenever he gives it a command. As a result, Ash is able to counter the Fire Pledge with the Counter Shield technique that he taught Duat and Infernape. And Infernape is able to land a powerful Flare Blitz, knocking Electivire down. Infernape does take recoil, but Ash did it to send a message. If Paul doesn't take this battle seriously, then he will lose. Electivire stands back up and looks at Paul, glaring at him. Then, without a command, Electivire fires a Thunderbolt at Paul, catching everyone off guard. But Pignite is able to intercept it, and he takes the hit. But this thunder causes huge damage to Pignite. This forces the battle to be stopped by Alder when he steps in. Paul rushes to Pignite, calling for Nurse Joy. Paul looks at Electivire. What were you thinking? He says. The look on Electivire's face changes from a look of anger to a look of puzzlement. It's like it didn't know what was going on. Paul recalls it as Nurse Joy arrives to tend to Pignite. Ash rushes over to help, and they head inside. Off in the distance, a storm is circling, very similar to the one that happened on the day that Paul and Ash arrived in Unova. In the morning, after all the Pokemon have been recovered, Alder then says, there is one other thing that I did want to talk to you about. Paul and Ash look at each other. He says, you're Carablast and Shelmet. These two Pokemon are all wrong for the two of you. Ash, puzzled, looking at Alder, and asks, what do you mean? Alder tells them that the two Pokemon don't fit their styles of training. Paul then looks at Alder. Look, if you think I'm going to release Shelmet, then you're crazy, old man. Ash supports this by saying he will work with Carablast as much as needed in order to get in sync with it. Alder then says, no, that's not what I'm talking about. Paul then says, what is it? Alder says, trade them. Paul says, what? Alder says, you should trade them with each other. That way, the Pokemon is not trying to adjust just to fail to the type of battle style that is their trainer. From my perspective, it would benefit both parties involved. Ash and Paul look at Alder. Alder says, listen, it's just a suggestion. Take it or leave it. With that, he leaves to head home. More time passes, and the storm has finally reached the Pokemon Center. Nurse Joy emerges from the medical room, and Paul rushes over to her. He asks if Pignite is okay. Nurse Joy tells Paul it will be fine, but it needs a lot of rest. But she hopes that the storm doesn't get any worse, as any interruption to the power could be a problem, not only for Pignite, but for the other Pokemon of the center. Paul then asks if he can see Pignite. Nurse Joy says yes, but it needs to be brief. So the trio head inside, and Pignite is unconscious, but stable. Paul's back is to Ash and Iris, when they hear Paul say, I'm sorry, I failed you. This catches both Ash and Iris off guard. Ash knows what this is, so he urges Paul to elaborate on what he said. Paul turns to them, and he actually has tears in his eyes. He tells them that this is hard for him to say, but he's been doubting himself ever since he caught Pignite, and it's been growing more and more with each battle that passes. Ash says, what do you mean? You and Pignite are in perfect sync. Paul tells them, I knew from the moment that I caught Pignite it was abandoned, and I didn't want to make the same mistakes that I did with Chimchar. So I've held myself back from pushing it, because I didn't want to give it the same type of mental stress that Chimchar had when I released it. But because I've been holding myself back, it's starting to affect my other Pokemon, which normally would be fine, as they and I don't have a lot of history. But Electivire and I do, and now it's causing issues to the point to where my other Pokemon are getting hurt. Paul then turns to Ash, and he says, this is the first time that I've ever been lost, and I haven't had the guidance of my brother. Ash walks over to Paul and puts his hand on his shoulder. He tells Paul, Pignite is not Infernape. When I caught Infernape as a Chimchar, it was in a bad place, but it wanted to get stronger, to prove to its previous trainer, you, that it could. So it did. Look at Pignite. You're in the same boat I was. Now, I don't know why Electivire attacked you, but it is clear by Pignite's reaction that it cares for you and it wants to grow with you, because it finally has a trainer that recognizes its power. Infernape then pops out of the Pokeball without being released. It looks at Paul and it nods in approval with Ash. Ash says, see, Infernape forgives you. It realizes that you've changed. You're not the same cold person you were. Ash then asks Paul, are you finally ready to accept my help? You don't have to do this alone. Paul looks at Ash and Infernape, but then the power to the Pokemon Center cuts off. Nurse Joy then comes in and tells them that all the lightning outside surging around the Pokemon Center has overloaded the power circuits, and until the storm passes, the power won't be able to come back on. Paul and Ash look at each other. They nod, and Ash tells Pikachu to come on, and they head outside. Ash tells Pikachu to absorb the lightning and divert it into the ground with its tail. But the problem is there's too much for Pikachu to absorb on its own, and it's getting overloaded. Ash tells Paul that Pikachu can't do it alone. They need Electivire. Paul is hesitant. Ash tells Paul to hurry. Pikachu won't last much longer. Paul pulls out Electivire's Pokeball and thinks to himself, I know we're having difficulties, but I really need you right now. Paul then sends in Electivire. Electivire comes out from the ball, and the storm surges violently, and all of the lightning is now diverted to Electivire with a flash. Once the light fades, there stands Electivire, but it's not normal. Paul calls to Electivire, and it turns. Electivire is surging with blue electricity, and it has the same look that it had when it attacked Paul the last time. Ash looks at Pikachu. It fainted from all the energy it absorbed. Ash knows that this situation is about to get heavy, as Electivire fires a thunder, but it's not aimed at Paul. It's just firing wildly. Ash calls to Infernape. We need to stop Electivire. Infernape looks at Ash and nods. Infernape needs to get Electivire's attention and fires a flamethrower, but it barely does anything, and Electivire just brushes it off. Ash thinks, this is bad. All of this energy has powered up Electivire, and not even Infernape has the power to match it. Well, not in its current form. Ash and Infernape look at each other as Paul watches on. They know what they have to do. Paul tells Ash he's crazy, but Ash says, do you have a better idea? Paul tells Ash and Infernape just to be careful, and he grabs Pikachu, and they move away from the battle. Ash orders a Flare Blitz. It connects, and finally, Electivire's attention turns to Ash and Infernape. Ash tells Infernape that they have to keep Electivire's attention focused on them. Ash then orders a close combat. This too causes some damage, but Electivire still stands, and in retaliation, it fires another thunder. This hits Infernape, knocking it down. Ash calls out to it, and it stands back up. Ash thinks, almost there. Ash then orders a flamethrower, but it's countered with a thunder punch from Electivire that hits Infernape, knocking it back. Electivire, thinking it had won, then turns its attention to Paul, but Ash calls to it, hey Electivire, where do you think you're going? This isn't over yet. Electivire turns, and there stands Infernape, and it's glowing. This is what Ash and Infernape wanted. Blaze. Ash knows that this is a huge risk, but it's the only thing that they have that can match this kind of power. Ash orders Infernape to attack, and the two Pokemon battle it out, holding nothing back. Paul can see that this is working. The energy that Electivire has accumulated is slowly dissipating. Paul tells Ash and Infernape to push harder. As Infernape blows with more intensity, something happens to Ash. He can feel it. Infernape, its thoughts, its feelings, and its pain. While the battle's going on, outside of Flockside Town, a lone trainer who saw the storm surging and has come to investigate it is approaching at the same time that all of this is happening, when his bag starts to glow. He just stares at it, thinking, what are you telling me, friend? Who are you reaching out to? Back with Ash and Infernape, Ash knows that they need to end this with one final push. Ash orders Infernape to use Flare Blitz and not to hold back. Infernape surges with Blaze and rushes in. Electivire charges a thunder, and the storm above surges. Infernape speeds toward Electivire with unprecedented velocity and connects with an explosion big enough to force the storm above in the sky and the clouds to dissipate. Once the smoke clears, Infernape is standing, but just barely, while Electivire is unconscious on the ground. Ash and Paul rush over to them. Infernape is hurt, but it will recover. Paul tries to wake up Electivire, and it briefly wakes up. It seems back to normal, but then it just faints again. Paul turns to Infernape to thank it for getting Electivire back to normal. Then, all the lights in the Pokemon Center come back on. Paul recalls Infernape, and the two trainers head back inside to get both their Pokemon looked at. Later that night, after the Pokemon have had some time to rest, Paul thanks Ash for the risk he took. Ash tells Paul not to worry about it. He knows that he would have done the same for him. Paul then asks Ash about the battle. He says it seemed like Infernape's blaze was way stronger than normal. Ash says, you noticed it too? I noticed it. It was strange. I could feel Infernape and its thoughts and pain, but it was weird. Toward the end of the battle, it was like I could feel a third presence, another voice that wasn't ours. But as soon as the battle was over, it was gone. Ash asked Paul if he knew anything about it, if he had ever experienced anything like that with Chimchar. Paul says no. I never fathomed that Infernape's power and blaze ability would grow in the way that it has, but it seems that Ash is the perfect person to bring it out. The two trainers decide to call it a night, as this day has been a pretty tiring one. In the morning, after all the Pokemon have recovered, Ash, Paul, and Iris get ready to head out when they are approached by a traveler who greets them. After they introduce themselves, this traveler tells them that his name is N, and he is on a very... Alright, now we switch over to Jesse, James, and Meowth. The trio have been quite busy. So, for a recap, before the three set out for the Unova region, they were debriefed by Giovanni. They were told that an ancient meteorite had crash landed on Earth thousands of years prior to the current day, and its energy surged through most of the planet, mainly in the Unova region. So their goal was to infiltrate the Unova region as natives, not even being allowed to take any Pokemon from their prior adventures with them, having to catch all new Pokemon. While there, they met up with several sleeper agents who, on occasion, would give them tools or their next orders. Though Jesse, James, and Meowth made a few brief encounters with Ash, Paul, and Iris to try and steal Pikachu, most of the time they spent observing them from afar, just keeping tabs on them, as their orders to find pieces of the meteorite and other ancient artifacts from Unova's past had them traveling from research institute to museum to private collections, gathering these artifacts. All the while, Giovanni keeping a close eye on their progress. As of late, in the Unova region, nature seems to have come unbalanced. And the more that Jesse, James, and Meowth start to retrieve these ancient artifacts, the more unstable nature has become, as it is shown with the storms that keep popping up randomly through Unova, mainly around Paul, Ash, and Iris. Jesse, James, and Meowth have spent several weeks completing their tasks, and now upon their latest communication with Giovanni, they have been informed that he is now leaving the Kanto region en route for the Hoenn region. But that's not the only thing. In the shadows, another secret organization native to the Unova region have been making their move. They have their own plans that they intend to bring to fruition, and they have been secretly watching Jesse, James, and Meowth, keeping tabs on their every move. And now that Team Rocket is finally ready to make their move, this hidden organization plans to make themselves known. Now that Paul and Electivire are struggling with their bond, and Ash and Infernape are strengthening theirs, Giovanni has decided to enter the picture. And with this shadow organization getting ready to make their presence known, and this mysterious young man known as N introducing himself to the heroes, what new adventures and threats awaiting them as their journeys in Unova continue? And that's all we have for part 6 of What If Paul and Ash Travel to the Unova region. What do you guys think about everything's going so far? How do you feel about the battle that Ash and Paul had? And how do you feel about the battle that Infernape and Electivire had? What's going on with Electivire? Why is it struggling with Paul so hard? And of course, what about Infernape? What was that voice that him and Ash can feel? And how about Ash and Infernape's bond? That seems to be getting stronger with each and every battle they have. And of course, N, Team Rocket, and the mysterious organization getting ready to make their move. A lot of things are getting ready to come to a headway, and neither one of our heroes have even earned their 4th badge yet. I encourage you guys to stay tuned for the next one, because I promise you, it's going to be a good one. But anyway, let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. And don't forget to drop a like, as it really helps out with the YouTube algorithm and helps us get to a larger audience. And if you already haven't, please don't forget to subscribe. We're growing very rapidly recently, and it's something that I'm extremely proud of. I'm actually aiming to see if we can hit close to 5,000 by the end of the year, which was nowhere near in the cards when I first started this channel at the beginning of the year. And also, if you guys like the what ifs, please make sure to join the Discord in the link below. There's a lot of people in there that have their own ideas, and they're looking to help other people with their what ifs. So if you want to talk Pokemon, or you want to talk your own series, please go there. And don't forget to follow me on Twitter. If you like finding out what I'm working on in real time, that's the place to do it, because I'll make posts about what I'm working on, or little teasers that could tip you off on what I'm currently doing. So with all that being said, I'm Ronin Charizaed, and I'll see you in the next video.